Welcome back to another episode of I Wish They Knew, a show where we share big ideas that deserve more attention in about the time it takes to enjoy a cup of coffee. I'm Joe Hirsch. Today's wish comes from Richard Simon. Richard directs website strategy for Georgetown Law School. He's also a former journalist and the author of a fascinating new book called Unplug, How to Break Up with Your Phone and Reclaim Your Life, something that a lot of us probably struggle with and have been thinking about lately. Rich, welcome to the show.
Joe, thanks for having me. Great to be here.
This is going to be a lot of fun. Just before we get started, I want to make sure your cell phone's off and put away.
I have no idea where it even is, Joe.
Okay. How many of you can actually say that about your phones? I can't say that about mine. So what do you wish more people knew?
I wish more people knew that it doesn't have to be this way. The first step to establishing a healthier relationship with your smartphone is, believe it or not, to turn it off.
Okay, so I have so many questions for you. But before we get into all that, I want to just set a baseline here. You're not anti-tech, correct?
I'm absolutely not anti-tech. I direct the website strategy for Georgetown Law School, so my career is technology. And I am more about how we can integrate technology in a much more intentional way into our lives.
Okay. And I think that's going to be the key word here is intentionality. So you're not a crusader and you're not an evangelist. You're just someone who wanted to make a change in your life. And for you, this was much more than just a theory. It literally became your way of life. For a year, you broke up with your phone, which, by the way, what kind of phone was that?
It was an iPhone.
And for that year, you completely unplugged. No apps, no social media, no exceptions. A lot of people will admit that they're too tethered to their phones. You know who you are. Few people actually do anything about it. So what made you do it?
Yeah, so as a husband and at the time, a father of two kids, it was really just putting a strain on so many facets of my life, from the ability to focus deeply at work, to be able to connect with my wife, certainly with my kids, especially when I took them out of the house. I wanted to be more present with them, finding time for activities that I wasn't able to find, high quality leisure, and then even just connecting with myself, being able to embrace solitude. And I tried so many hacks, so many different shortcuts to establish a more effective relationship with it, and it just didn't cut it. So that's where the idea for turning off my smartphone for an entire year, that's how it came about.
Okay, so was this something that you gradually came to, or was this just sort of like a flash, a realization where you said, I need to change and I need it now?
Yeah, it was definitely bothering me for years, especially when we had our first child in 2016. I mean, definitely, I was thinking about it leading up to 2016, but when we had our first kid, I just became that much more aware of it because I was starting to try all those kinds of shortcuts, those hacks, trying to delete social media, digital Sabbath, the phone FOIA method, leave it in one part of the house and just leave it there for the day. It just wasn't getting me close enough to being in control of it rather than it being in control of me. And then I just realized in 2019, I just had to do something drastic about it. I read a story about a media professor in Australia. It's a book about how he went on a container ship for close to 5 weeks with no technology. And although I don't think I could get away with my wife on going on a container ship for 5 weeks and not carrying any technology, I felt like the next best thing was to reset the relationship I had was to have my phone off for a year.
So give us a picture of that before and after, prior to turning off your phone. Were you a heavy phone user? And you mentioned it sort of interfering with your ability to be present and to have focused relationships with others and even yourself. But after you unplugged, what kind of impact did that have on your day to day?
Yeah, so I wouldn't call myself a heavy smartphone user even before I went through the detox experience. I mean, average American adult spends more than 5 hours a day on it. And I wasn't quite at that level. But on an average week, I'd be spending anywhere from 3 to 4 hours a day on it. Added up over the course of the week, that's 25 to 30 hours. And as you know, Joe, that's time you don't get back. Time on this earth, it's a finite, non-renewable resource, and I was realizing I was losing out on time. So I wouldn't even call myself a heavy smartphone user, but even just waiting in the line at the grocery store, even just that minute and a half, 2 minutes, I would always reach for it. Doctor's waiting room, the 10 minutes I'd wait, I'd be on it. On the train to DC, on it. So whenever I had any free moment when I really should have just been relaxing, just turning off, I was on my phone. So what did it look like afterwards? I'll focus on one area I think will resonate with listeners, especially if you have a spouse, a partner, or girlfriend, boyfriend, whatever it might be. My wife and I, we would always text throughout the day. And it might sound like a small thing, but we would text literally throughout the day. And then when we get home, there'd be nothing to catch up on because literally we just texted throughout the entire day. But what happened when we would get home? Since we weren't texting, there was this genuine excitement in terms of finding out what happened, from the mundane administrative tasks in terms of household things to more important things like what's happening in our kids' lives, whatever it might be. So that was a big piece. Then also, after we put the kids to sleep, my wife and I would usually just be on our phones. And this would last 2-3 hours. We're technically with each other, but we're really not because we're just looking down at our phones. And with my phone out of the equation, I really wanted to set aside quality time every single night to be with her. And that continues to this day.
So was she on board with this whole experiment from the start? I imagine it must have been difficult.
Oh, yeah, no, she was totally not on board. As any good pediatrician, she had lots of good questions in terms of how this would work, from what if our kid has an anaphylactic reaction to what if there's a terrorist on the train, God forbid. I mean, we ran through all of these different scenarios. And I go through 4 different breakup styles that emerged from the dozens of interviews that I conducted from people who did this from all walks of life. And the one that I really embrace is the philosophy that I've coined, off by default. So for the detox and turning off your phone, in the book I recommend 60 days. The idea is that you still have your smartphone with you, but you only turn it on if there's an emergency. And what does that mean for me and for all the people that I interviewed? You're not turning it on. We think there really are emergencies in life, when really there really aren't emergencies in life. I still carried my smartphone with me. I just didn't turn it on for 12 months. And that gave my wife at least the peace of mind. All right, here's the deal. I know Rich doesn't have it on, but at least if there's something that comes up that's an emergency, he'll call if he needs to.
So why not just get a so-called dumb phone, without all the distractions and temptations of a smartphone?
Yeah, so that's one of the 4 breakup styles I mentioned in the book, is simplifying your phone. And that definitely could be a good option for people. And it's probably the most popular one. Since the book came out 3 weeks ago, I've heard from a pastor in Mississippi, a nurse anesthesiologist in Minnesota, a product specialist in Georgia, I mean, all over the place. And all of them have said, oh, we're simplifying our phones. I think it's a fantastic strategy. But for me personally, knowing how I used my basic phone, even before I got my first smartphone in 2010, I knew I was still going to be on it more than I would like. So I realized that if I really wanted to recalibrate the reward pathways in my brain, I thought the most effective strategy would be the off by default philosophy.
Yeah, so it really comes down to knowing yourself and your habits.
Correct.
Right. So a lot has been said and written about kids and smartphones and the social and cognitive effects of that. And so I want to sort of put that to the side and focus on how all this really affected you personally. So you've got a job, you've got a family, you got kids, you got life. And a lot of that runs through a smartphone, whether that's, using GPS to get to the zoo or to a doctor's appointment, or updating your family calendar on the fly, or using AI to solve your kids' math homework. Again, speaking from personal experience here. So how much friction did unplugging actually cause you in your daily life? And give us a sense of how you manage all the logistics.
Yeah. So in my book, I talk about how important preparation is for this whole process. If you just go cold turkey, like any behavioral addiction or any addiction in general, substance addiction, it's not going to go well. Even with preparation, pretty much everyone I interviewed for the book went through withdrawal, and I was no exception to that rule. I mean, I went through withdrawal. Certainly the first couple weeks, anxiety,
Like not knowing what was going on in the social world, or what?
not being able to reach for something in my pocket. I felt anxious. I mean, the first day, I remember we talked about the grocery store earlier. I remember we were in South Carolina on vacation at the grocery store, and I'm literally freaking out standing in line for 3-4 minutes because I had nothing to do. Now that might sound totally crazy, but that's a completely normal reaction. I had people I interviewed for the book who they went for a walk for the first time, just a half-hour walk out in the neighborhood without their phones, and they're freaking out inside. Going into the car and not having the smartphone and freaking out. After I got past the first 2-3 weeks, I was golden. I felt like I was king of the world because I had all this time. But I also ahead of time knew that I had replacement activities in terms of things that I wanted to do, because once again, average American get over more than 5 hours a day on your smartphone. How are you going to fill that time? So for me, that's what was so vital. But in terms of like logistics, getting in and out of academic buildings, before I used my smartphone, I had to switch over to a physical card. Duo authentication, I use a MacBook, so now I have a fingerprint that I use to get in. In terms of GPS, I don't have GPS, so I would print out directions or I would write out directions. And at first this was scary, then I realized how empowering that whole experience was. Like, it was incredibly empowering, even though it was a whatever 25, 30-minute drive, whatever it is, to get to whatever location and drop my kids off at a birthday party. Like, I was like, wow, like I did it. And all of a sudden I got to know our community much better than I did before. I became much more intentional in terms of photography, in terms of taking photos, in terms of actually having a real physical camera. So for sure there were challenges and there were parts that I was scared about, but I would much rather be a present person, not having my smartphone on all the time around my family and certainly with myself. I would much rather be that person than be glued all the time to my phone.
Let's go back to breakups. You argue that a lot of the digital detox interventions that have become popular, you mentioned a few of them, deleting social media or tracking your screen time or going grayscale, none of that really cuts it. And maybe for some people, simplification works, but for a lot of people, they need something different. For those who want to unplug but don't quite know how, can you share some of those strategies that actually work?
Yeah. So I interviewed dozens of people, from an on-call anesthesiologist to a law partner to a financial analyst, graphic designer, software engineer, school principal. And what ultimately emerged from all these conversations was, for the people that turned them off, there were really four breakup styles that came out of it. And the first is simplifying your phone. So moving from a smartphone to a basic phone. And for the sake of the detox, I recommend going as basic as possible. So like an Alcatel TCL Flip, a Nokia, you're not going to spend more than $80 on it at Best Buy. But something that just calls and texts, and literally that's it. There are many basic phones out there now that have apps, that have more features than you'd call more of a feature phone. And at least for the detox, I think it's important to go as basic as possible. So that's the first one, simplifying your phone. The second one is the off by default philosophy, and that's the one that I embraced. We talked about what that looks like for a detox, but what I embrace today, and I encourage people who do the off by default to do this, is after you've done the off by default approach, you've had your phone off for at least 60 days, you only turn it on in the case of emergencies. After you get past the detox, then you can loosen the off by default philosophy. You can still have your smartphone, but you only turn your smartphone on if there's something that will enhance your life. Now, Joe, if I would tell you to do that right now, only turn on your smartphone to do something that will enhance your life, that will be like really, really tricky, because you're like, all right, well, what does that mean? But after
Well,
you've gone through,
everything, right.
yeah, exactly. After you've gone through the detox, though, you can find these are the few things where this actually matters and the things that I miss. And you can more intentionally bring it in. If you're doing dishes at night and you're like, gosh, I could really want to listen to a podcast. All right, so then you do the podcast. You're taking your kids to Hershey Park. All right, use it for GPS. But what happens when you get to Hershey Park? You turn it off. And then all of a sudden, you're in control of it. So that's what I encourage people to do after the off by default philosophy and the detox, is just to loosen the definition slightly. The third approach is going truly cold turkey. And I interviewed millennials who did this, which is literally getting rid of it altogether. No basic phone, no smartphone. You're just getting rid of it altogether. And the fourth one, which I think will definitely resonate for listeners to this podcast, is quitting with someone else. So whether it be a partner, whether it be a dear friend, a colleague, doing it with someone else, it's an incredibly powerful experience. I interviewed two couples who did it together, a couple in Italy and then a couple in Northern Ireland who did it. And there can be something that's incredibly satisfying by either going to a basic phone or embracing the off by default philosophy with someone else.
So help make the case for a couple where one person is on board with a detox, they want to reset, the other does not. What could a person say to their spouse, to their partner, to help at least create some understanding, if not participation in that process?
I think that one of the best case is that I really want to reconnect with you. And that was something that I told my wife, is that I want to reconnect with myself, which it sounds selfish. So I don't necessarily want you to say that to your spouse, which might be true. But say, I want to reconnect with you and get tangible. Say, listen, my screen time right now is, let's say, 5 hours and 12 minutes a day. And even if we only spend like 60 to 90 minutes only, 60 to 90 minutes just reconnecting every evening with each other. Whether it's watching a TV show, watching a movie, reading together, going out to the restaurant once a week. Like go through actual tangible things that you can do and what you're going to do with all this newfound time for 60 days. I mean, like, that's a really, really good case.
So that year of experimentation, that year of detox comes to an end. What was it like the first time you turned your phone back on?
Yeah, so that was really interesting. A lot of people, especially for interviews for this book, have wanted to know like what happened after the year. So I turned on my phone after 12 months, and then I'm waiting and I'm waiting. And Joe, nothing happened. I open up my text and it's still the year before. I open up my WhatsApp and it's still the year before. It was like my phone thought it was still 12 months earlier. So I guess what happens is that if a message does not get received, at a certain point it gets lost in the digital ether. So I thought it was like a very, very powerful moment because we get so scared about turning our phone even off for like 2 hours. If we're like, let's say in a movie theater or whatever it might be, like 2 hours, let alone an entire year. And like I did it for an entire year and it was like nothing had happened. I thought it was a really, really powerful, powerful moment. So yeah, you get scared about turning off your smartphone, and that's natural. But even if you do it for an entire year, just know it's absolutely possible. Yeah, there are not too many repercussions.
The book is Unplug, and the author, and he's plugged me into some really big ideas here today in this conversation, is Richard Simon. Rich, thanks for sharing your wish with us today.
Joe, thanks for having me. It was great to be on.